Viruses are not alive. Viruses are not exactly dead either. So, what are viruses? We all know a thing or two about viruses, and even if we don't, we've definitely heard about them at some point in our lives. But trust me, there's more to viruses than you've probably already known. And that's exactly what we'll be discussing on today's video. How are viruses discovered? Who developed the technique for discovering viruses? Do viruses really exist? Where does a good immune system fit into the virus narrative? And a lot more. But before we begin, do well to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell-like notification button for more timely updates. Now, let's dive in. What is a virus? A virus is a microscopic parasite that's generally much smaller than bacteria. Speaking of size, viruses are the smallest type of parasite to exist, and even though some may be as large as 1 micrometer, they are usually not more than 0.02 to 0.3 micrometers in size. A viral particle, or virion, contains a single nucleic acid, RNA or DNA, core surrounded by a protein coat and sometimes enzymes that are required to initiate viral replication. Viruses can only replicate within the cells of animals, plants, and bacteria, and, as such, they are referred to as obligate intracellular parasites. For the most part, viruses have a reputation for being the cause of contagion. And, of course, widespread events of disease and death have bolstered such a reputation. But nevertheless, viruses are in no way classified according to the illness they cause. Rather, they are grouped into a lot of different families based on whether the nucleic acid is single or double-stranded, whether a viral envelope is present, or the kind of mode they adopt for replication. At this point, you should bear in mind that viruses are not necessarily an excrement of the human body, though some of them may be found in feces or urine. You may want to ask, what role does homeopathy have to play in the world of viruses? Oh well, you must have thought deeply. Homeopathy is basically a medical system based on the belief that the body can cure itself. It involves using tiny amounts of natural substances, like plants and minerals, to stimulate the body's healing process. Sometimes, people use this method of treatment to combat viruses, and even if it is not generally accepted to be effective, it works a great deal. Discovery of viruses. Are viruses really alive? Let's take a quick dive into the discovery of viruses and whether or not they truly exist. If viruses are actually as small as they are said to be, then what gives us the impression that they are really alive? Oh well, that's a million-dollar question in there, and the answer is right here. When researchers came across viruses for the first time and realized they seemed to behave similarly to bacteria, they were only left with a single general consideration, and that is that viruses are biologically alive. Yes, you heard that correctly. While this was the case in the early stage of virus discovery, it ceased to be so in the 1930s, when it was demonstrated that virions lack the mechanisms that are necessary for metabolic function. The moment scientists determined that viruses simply consist of DNA or RNA contained within a protein shell, they generally became thought of as biochemical mechanisms rather than living organisms. Whew! So how much smaller are most viruses in comparison to bacteria? Quite a bit, I'd say. With a diameter of 220 nanometers, the measles virus is about 8 times smaller than E. coli bacteria. At 45 nanometers, the hepatitis virus is about 40 times smaller than E. coli. For a sense of how small this is, David R. Wessner, a professor of biology at Davidson College, provides an analogy in a 2010 article published in the journal Nature Education. The polio virus, 30 nanometers across, is about 10,000 times smaller than a grain of salt. Such differences in size between viruses and bacteria provided the critical first clue of the former's existence. Toward the end of the 19th century, the notion that microorganisms, especially bacteria, could cause disease was well established. However, researchers looking into a troubling disease in tobacco, the tobacco mosaic disease, were somewhat stumped as to its cause. How do viruses infect? Viruses cannot survive independently. They do not have the mechanisms to do so. So, how do they infect? Well, they tend to seek out plant, animal, or bacterial host cells, where they can use their cells' machinery to replicate. Again, viruses cannot survive on their own. They need bodies like yours and mine to keep living. Let's take a look at some of the ways a virus can infect or get itself onto a host. Simply, the virus enters hosts through transmission. This can be either horizontal or vertical, though it is mostly horizontal. Some examples of horizontal transmission you should know include 1. The direct contact transmission. This basically refers to transmission done via physical contact between an infected subject and that which is yet to be infected. It could be through kissing, biting, or any form of sexual intercourse at all. Now you know that you may become a host for viruses if you revel in unprotected close contact with everyone and anyone around you. So what do? Abstain, I guess. Or what do you think? It's up to you. 2. The indirect transmission. Here, the virus is transmitted via contaminated objects or infected materials such as medical equipment or shared eating utensils. Anyone who shares materials or objects that are likely to carry viruses without proper disinfection usually does so at his own peril. You don't want to regret using something that ought to be of great help to you, right? Then do the necessary things. You could wash off your hands with soap and water just before using objects that are susceptible to public use, and after, clean them with alcohol-based hand rub, or abstain totally. 3. The common vehicle transmission. This transmission mode refers to when individuals pick up the virus from food and water supplies that are contaminated with feces. And more often than not, it results in epidemic diseases like diarrhea, measles, and the likes that spread 1,000 times more than what is normally expected in a given population in a specific area. And finally, there's the airborne transmission, which is usually more deadly than the other modes. It refers to the respiratory infection that occurs when the virus is inhaled. By simply inhaling the virus, you're likely to carry it and transfer it to other persons. Isn't that deadly? Of course it is. When a virus comes in contact with a host cell, it can insert its genetic material into its host and literally take over the host's functions. Viruses and the human immune system. Where exactly does a good immune system fit into the virus narrative? We've heard lots and lots of stories about how immune systems fight viruses on their own without any external aid, or something like that. Does this mean that I can combat viruses simply by building my immune system? Well, let's see. Stuff happens. You nick your skin and bacteria get in. Or you rub your eyes, not realizing that the doorknob you touched had a cold virus on it. Or you ate something that maybe wasn't cooked or cleaned as well as it should have been. And just like that, you got an unwanted guest in your body. Your immune system steps in, like a bouncer who means business. It releases white blood cells and other chemicals that destroy these threats. Or it causes a reaction, like a sneeze, to boot out a virus in your nose. It's an elite squad of agents that zap invaders, like bacteria, viruses, and fungi, as soon as possible. They zoom through your body and defend you. White blood cells to the rescue. Germs look for ways to get under your skin, literally. They could get in through a cut, ride in on something you ate, filter through the air, or wait on a coin for you to touch it and then rub your eyes. Once inside, they start to breed. You're infected, and it can make you feel sick. Your immune system should know that there's a problem. It reads a telltale fingerprint of proteins on the surface of cells, so it can tell the difference between your own cells and what shouldn't be there. Your white blood cells aim to destroy the unwelcome guests. They get their start in your bone marrow. They have a short life, ranging from a few days to a few weeks, so your body constantly makes more. There are different types, and they all have the same goal: to fight infection. They wait, poised for duty, in many different places in your body, including your blood vessels, lymph nodes, small intestine, and adenoids. Your lymphatic system is like an inner highway that carries white blood cells through your body. When you're sick, you might notice your lymph nodes, small glands in your neck, groin, armpits, and behind your knees, are swollen. This is normal. It means your immune system has kicked into high gear to get rid of infection. Lymph nodes are also filters for your immune system. They catch germs and dead or damaged cells and destroy them. Now, here's how this works. Your white blood cells lock onto the germs in order to absorb or destroy them. They have antibodies that latch onto the germs. Common cold, flu, and your immune system. Colds and flu are among the most common human ailments. Luckily, your body naturally has ways to fight off cold and flu viruses and get you back to health with the right cold and flu remedy. A cold is an infection of the upper respiratory system, caused by one of about 200 viruses. Same with flu. This is the primary reason why the vaccine to prevent common colds have been difficult to make. It's up to your immune system to help fight back. And there you have it, all you need to know about viruses and viral transmissions. If you enjoyed this video as much as I did, click on the like button and let us know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on your post notification so you don't miss out on more juicy updates. See you next time.